Hello, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Cody Beyer. Welcome to the .NET Community Standup Tooling Edition. I am not Kendra Havens. She is on vacation right now, so I'm going to be hosting the show today. Today we have Sayed Hashimi and Jordan Matthiesen with us.
Hey.
Folks.
Hello. Nice. It feels like we're having our little band back together. We've all worked closely together for a few years and doing some different things these days, and now we're all together on a call like old times.
Right. Grab your guitars and actually have the band back together, you know.
Part of the theme here with our mics and guitars and things. Yeah. Good to see you guys.
It's like a deja vu here. You know, it's pretty funny. It wasn't that long ago, but man, it seems like it was forever, dude.
That's the quarantine for you.
It's the theme of this year, yeah.
2020 for you, right? You know what I mean?
But yeah, no, it's good. I mean, I think what was the last time we were all on a team together? Was it like April?
February?
March? Yeah.
Maybe April. Yeah, April, I think. Yeah, that's right. April, dude.
We were talking yesterday. This would have been the time where we would all meet in Boston.
Boston, yeah, that's right. That's right.
Our yearly team meeting. So of course we're not flying this year. We can all drive to Boston, I guess. That's still against the quarantine rules though. But yeah, how's life going for everybody?
All right, everything's going really great, you know. For the should we go ahead and introduce ourselves for those of the audience that may not know us?
Yeah.
So I'm Sayed Hashimi, senior program manager at Microsoft. Been here, you know, a little bit over 10 years, always doing something with ASP.NET. Man, I love ASP.NET. And working on some really cool kind of features today that we're going to show off, talking about, you know, creating your own custom templates for .NET and using those at the CLI as well as Visual Studio and Visual Studio for Mac.
We had some drops there. Somebody referring to, I think, Sidewaffle. So they're familiar to a few folks.
Man,
and I'm Jordan Matthiesen. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, go for it, Jordan.
I tangented you there and I'm jumping back in. But Jordan Matthiesen, I work on Visual Studio for Mac, and I've been with Microsoft for 8 years or so, working on various things around JavaScript tooling and Visual Studio itself, and mobile tools for JavaScript developers, and then Visual Studio for Mac now for three or almost 4 years. So in the IDE in general is what I work on.
And I think most people from this stream know me, but Cody, I've been with Microsoft for a little bit over 4 years now, and I'm mainly working on better understanding the developer experience within all of C and AI, so the cloud and Azure and Visual Studio and developer tools, so all those different toolings and experiences there. So that's kind of my main focus right now, a broad view of everything. But yeah, Syed, Sidewalk, what's
Yeah,
this?
right. Yeah, so I can't. It looks like I can't reply in the comments for some reason, but I've been working on templates for a really long time here. Basically, there was before. I was working on the ASP.NET team in Visual Studio, and we were kind of one of the teams that was heavily invested in creating templates. And man, we had a developer that devoted a significant amount of his time to managing those templates. So, I've been working for several years to kind of simplify that. And in the comments, there was a question about Sidewalk, and that was an extension that I created to simplify templates a few years ago, and that's what kind of made me realize, the difficulty in creating templates, right? And especially for Visual Studio, they've got the kind of VS template file there, and man, it's really hard to create and maintain templates. And then we created some templates for Yeoman. They were also kind of difficult to maintain as well. And, I think the problem with creating templates is, most of these template engines, what they do is they require you to modify your source in order for it to be used as a template. So a side effect of that is you're constantly maintaining two different things. You're maintaining the source that could actually build and run, and then you're maintaining your tokenized version of that. But what we did was we created what's called the template engine. And with the template engine, we kind of flipped that on its head. Instead of modifying your source to do replacements, all you do is you indicate what replacements should happen and the regular strings, and then boom, it just kind of does all the replacements, right? So that's what we'll be talking about today. I've got a list of links here. I wonder if you could share that, Cody.
Yeah, I'll hop on to Jordan's screen here.
Yep.
So
and then to answer the question about Sidewalk, now we don't need Sidewalk anymore. We really kind of achieved all of our goals here, basically. So yeah, there's not going to be any Sidewalk here, but
what's the story of that name, though? I mean, I think the technology is interesting, but the name is like...
Yeah, what the story behind the name is, this was back when I was living in Washington. I went on a hike to the Enchantments. That's in the starting point is in Leavenworth, Washington.
No, it's like the Germantown, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Germantown, and they have a Sandy's Waffle House. And we went there before we started our hike. And one of my friends, his name is David. He actually went to school with me at UF. He lives in Seattle now too. He's like kind of a big eater, right? So we go there for breakfast, and he orders his food, and then the waitress comes by to check on us, and David asks, he goes, "Hey, is there such a thing as a side waffle? Because I just want a waffle to kind of go along with my meal." And then, the waitress kind of started laughing at him. She was like, "No, there's no such thing as a side waffle." And then boom, that's where the name kind of came from. First I did like a PSA on Twitter. I said, "Hey, sidewaffle.com is available. Sounds like a great project name," but nobody picked it up. So I took it myself,
Yeah.
That's how we do it.
First of all, I really want to go to Livermore. I haven't been there yet. And it's like 9 hours away from me. So it's kind of a drive, but it's worth it.
Oh, yeah, man. Beautiful hikes. Beautiful hikes.
Yeah. Yeah, and it seems like it's social distance friendly because it's kind of outside a lot of it, right? The whole town itself, it's kind of like,
yeah,
they do it up well for the holidays and stuff.
They do normally have like a very kind of crowded Oktoberfest, I believe.
Right.
Yeah, normally they would have, I think,
Yeah, but they have one in Mount Angel down here in Oregon too. Sweet.
Cool place.
Yeah, I got some stories of domain names if we have to fill some time on talking about those. But let's hop into the links here for a moment. I think we'll just start bottom up. Jordan, how does that sound?
Sounds from the bottom on up. Okay, I was going to start down on the top down, so it's very good. That's why we have specifications and follow them, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I read the spec, and I hear you. So let's start bottom up. So the bottom one there was our Visual Studio 2019 for Mac. I put in here preview release notes. So what I work on with VS for Mac, around the idea as a whole, we've been doing a few things in this release. So just tease those up at the start real quick. The link there takes you to our release notes, talking about some of what we are up to. We're going to demonstrate for you today. Syed's going to show it first on Windows, but there's this top bullet that we have in the release. as a preview feature that's going on across Visual Studio and Visual Studio for Mac, in which you can see, as I had mentioned a moment ago, being able to see templates you install through the .NET command line and have those appear in the Visual Studio IDE. So you see it in Visual Studio for Mac, Visual Studio on Windows. You're able to enable this preview feature and see the templates. The same template you'd used in .NET, the .NET command line, will now work in the IDEs as well. So like Sayed said, we're maintaining one set of templates instead of multiple for each environment. So we'll demonstrate that in a moment, and I'll just tag real quick a couple of the items we've done. This release will include support for debugging Blazor WebAssembly applications or Blazor WASM applications. It's been a big request, and rounds out the story for WebAssembly development with Blazor and Visual Studio for Mac. And then another one that's really easier to demonstrate, that kind of a small change that I'm excited about, is some changes around. If you've used Visual Studio for Mac, the layout of like this menu with the windows was different before. Some folks had difficulty finding our tool windows. We called them pads before. So that could lead to confusion when you're coming from Visual Studio. Where are my tool windows? So we're starting to introduce here, work along a theme that you'll see coming up in the year ahead, where there's more stuff going on, where we're doing what we call harmonizing the IDEs. So getting a similar feel for Visual Studio for Mac with some things in Visual Studio Code as well, exploring ways to make it easier to move through those tools. VS for Mac is where I'm focusing on here. And so that came out in getting rid of our pads terminology and being consistent with tool windows everywhere, so you can kind of more easily find your way around. And then a few little changes too, with a pin icon for these windows. It behaves the same way you're used to in Visual Studio. The previous icon could lead to confusion. So some smaller changes, but we hope that those are these little, what we call paper cuts, that come up that help you out as you use the IDE. The other one was a build output window. So when you build now, this will pop up, and that if you use Visual Studio on Windows, be used to this window coming up right away by default, showing you the build progress. Ours was a different experience before, so it's another spot that we're now similar to each other.
Yeah,
and
I
that
think
all ties in. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's always going to be like, there you go. Now I don't have to deal with scrolling. Sorry, everybody. Still learning this tool. There's always going to be this slow march towards like parity, right? Like, I know it's always, I remember back from the VS for Mac team, and I'm sure this still happens nowadays, that it's this constant like weighing parity with keeping the native experience and keeping the VS for Mac experience very Mac focused. So this is an area where we really want feedback across the board. So if you have any feedback on where you fall on parity versus similarities versus platform specific, it's one of the things that we can never quite get perfect. So any feedback there is much appreciated. I think all feedback can be sent directly to Jordan at either his home address or we'll share it in the chat later. But yeah, that's some cool stuff. I still love the terminal integrated too. I think that is one of the biggest like advancements, or one of the biggest things to make VS for Mac more inclusive of all these other development styles, is the fact that you have your terminal built right in. So
yeah, that was when we brought in the last release of both IDs, Visual Studio on Windows and VS for Mac was another spot we brought in an integrated terminal at the same time. So it was exciting to have things come on, being available, we'll say simultaneously shipping.
Yeah, I wanted to pop up this question from Jaren. I hope I got your name right. So the question is, how much is there code sharing between VS, Windows, and Mac? And the answer is yes, there is. And there's more and more as time goes on. I can speak towards the editor, and Jordan can speak towards more recent developments, but the editor that you see in VS for Mac, if Jordan wants to open a CS file right now, let's see. This editor is essentially the same editor that you get in VS Windows on the back end. The front end is all Cocoa, the native UI for VS for Mac, but the back end thing that tells the text where to go and the spacing and all that, that's all the exact same as VS Windows, and even down to the templating. So there's a lot of code sharing going on there. And Jordan, I know there's probably some more recent code sharing around like Blazor templates and some of the .NET Core stuff too. Is there anything to add there?
Well, I would say in general to that question. So that was a great point with the editor source code. We're also at a point where we're looking at how we leverage more and more code sharing between the IDs. So a fun geek fact with Visual Studio for Mac is it's built all on .NET. We actually run on top of Mono, but with .NET Standard and the advancements that happen in the platform when we're coding more elements toward that standard, if you will, we're able to share code more so between the IDs. That's what enabled the editor code base to be able to have the work done so that it could be used on the back end for both IDEs. And you'll see more of that as a theme over time as we look at, well, where do we go with being on top of .NET 5 or .NET 6 and building on top of that? The other things that you start to see will be our Git functionality is a big area because there's been big improvements for Git on Visual Studio over on Windows. Oh, my build finally finished, and now the error list popped up.
That's probably my fault for making you open a code file.
Oh, that was fine. And so Git is one area you see. We'll be exploring more. There's stuff behind the scenes that we share that are these internal components that are used to, for example, how we work with Roslyn. We're able to code share and just use Roslyn on the Mac. The way Visual Studio communicates with it, there's internal components used for that. We'll be leveraging those as well as that changes happen over time. So yeah, there's lots more space for code sharing as we go forward. Git will be a really big visible one. I think will be the next thing you'll see the most.
Yeah, and it's also a two-way street though. It's not just like VS for Mac borrowing from Windows. There's some features that were, on VS for Mac that have now been added to Windows because of this shared backend. And that's like, for example, the show import items. So if you're typing in, something to do with like table query segment, and you don't have that imported, it will still show in your completion list. Then you can click on it and it'll be automatically added to your imports. So that's a feature that started in VS for Mac and then was carried over to Windows. So there's this symbiosis between the two. That's yeah. So I'll pop your question up again, Jaron. That's what we just answered. So yeah, things developed on Mac also end up on Windows, and there's a lot of crosstalk between the teams too. We're all essentially the same team organizationally in the sense of all working on .NET tooling. So there's a lot of cross pollination there too.
Yeah, and there was one more earlier. I'll switch back here toward the URL list so we can move on the thing. But one other I saw was one other question earlier on, also about us running on top of Apple Silicon. So
where's
that
there it is.
a little back.
Jaron, he's like the question king
on
today.
Fire. Yeah, so that, yes, we're working on that. We're going to work to, once Apple Silicon devices are out, we want to be sure that the ID will work on there as well. So we've got some folks that have tried it out with the developer kits. Right now, it seems to be working okay, and that's going through the Apple has a layer called Rosetta in Mac OS that they used this when they made their original transition over to Intel-based architectures, and so now it's the same name, at least for that approach, with moving toward Silicon. So we're able to build and have been able to confirm it's working through there. And we'll watch over time where we start to shift if we have to do some direct coding to run on the Silicon versus the Rosetta layer. We're going to make sure that the ID keeps running on the latest Macs over time. So testing it out now so that the base level compatibility works. And then over time, I'd expect us to start moving more and more to be natively on top of Apple Silicon.
And I got to say that Apple Silicon is probably one of the best marketing terms. Like I've never heard anybody say like, "Oh, this is, Intel Silicon. This is AMD Silicon." Now, that was, I don't know. It's everybody calls it their, their A series processors, Apple Silicon. It's just, I thought that was genius. But anyway, I want to answer your question here. Can you pass along the documentation? That is all within this link here at the URL list. So I know it's kind of hard to copy and paste that. Maybe we can get some OCR tools to like capture it, read it, post it. But yeah, I can also put it in the chat. I guess that would be easier than me trying to, invent a new way of handling this. So the next link I think is Xamarin Essentials, right?
Yeah.
So Xamarin Essentials, if you're not aware, it's kind of a probably talk about this in the Xamarin stand-up. I think it's a pretty cool thing to talk about because it abstracts away a lot of the more platform-specific actions and makes it easier to access from a single API. Now, one of the promises that we have in this .NET cross-platform ecosystem is this, code write once, run anywhere type of approach. And the more that you can abstract out platform-specific code, so trying to think back to mobile development, like a web view on Android versus a web view on iOS. If you want to customize them, you'd have to write handlers for each one. But with Xamarin Essentials, you're able to abstract that away. So we have a new, lost Sayed again. We have a new update to Xamarin Essentials 1.6 preview, which has Mac OS and media stuff. You want to scroll down a little bit. Can we show this video? Can we do video and video and video? Does that?
I can see what happens real quick.
Let's see here. All right. We can, but it's just incredibly slow. It's a lot faster than that in real life, I do promise.
Yeah, I'm also out in a more rural area, and my bandwidth isn't the greatest. So
I'll look at that little monkey. That's
wouldn't
cute.
be a good Xamarin demo without a monkey in the mix.
Yeah, exactly. But have you seen the monkey that Xamarin's based on? It's so cute. The tamarin. All right, so keep scrolling down. So Mac OS, one of the cool things in this release is that Mac OS is now part of the Xamarin Essentials family. So if you want to use Xamarin.Mac or any of these other Xamarin technologies to write for Mac OS, it's now in there with Tizen and Android and all the Apple OS families. So it's now the family's back together, the band's back together, as we've been referring to for this show. I just wanted to point that out. That's a pretty cool update on Xamarin Essentials. We have a question from Kirill. Not that Kirill, different Kirill. Let's see here. I think we might have to get back on this one. I think Jeremy Sinclair answered it too. So perfect. Cool.
All right.
All right. I just like to have this feature. Go ahead.
People are answering questions that I don't even know the answer to there. Thank you very much, Jeremy Sinclair. He's a great community guy.
Yeah, definitely. I never recognize that name. All right. So next we have the template samples, but I think before we get to those links, Sayed, do you want to start sharing some of the template, items? I can't put your screen up on right now, so I think I have to have you hit that share button again.
Oh, my bad. Yeah, no, I had to. I was having some audio issues on my side, so I had to leave and come back.
Well, the audio has to go all the way from Portland to Florida. That's a long way away.
Yeah, that is a long way away, dude.
So I mean, I can understand that.
Oh yeah.
All right, there we go. Now you should be able to see Sayed's screen. So VS Code there.
Let me bring my my browser over here as well, so we can show some resources here. So the first thing, I think this show is more kind of geared towards template authors, those people that's going to create templates, right? But even before that is really, how do I discover and use templates that have already been created by other individuals, right? So I've got this website here, .netnew.azurewebsites.net, and we're going to be going through and kind of changing the styling of this over the past couple days, over the next several weeks here. So this hopefully is going to be looking a lot better. But this is the place that you can go and find templates, right? So for example, we have there's kind of a popular template called .NET Boxed. So if I was looking for those templates, I can come in here and search for box, and then I can kind of drill into it and see what templates are there. And, there's also the example of how to kind of go ahead and install that. So the idea is, for the past several years, we've had support for creating custom templates that would be used by .NET New. And the way that you would install that is, on the CLI, you'll say .NET New -- install and the name of NuGet package. If you're actually developing templates, you can also install with a folder path or to a NuGet package that's locally on your machine. The stuff that we're going to show today, where it shows up in the IDE, whether it's Visual Studio or Visual Studio for Mac, those need to be installed from a NuGet package. And, that could either be from NuGet.org or from some other NuGet server or even locally, right? So, but you have to have your templates inside of a NuGet package for them to appear in the IDE. And one of the reasons is we rely on metadata that's in that NuGet package. For example, the name of the author, stuff like that. So yeah, exactly. So you can go to .NET New.AzureWebsites.net to find existing community templates, and then go ahead and start using those. And if you take a look here, we do have a lot of existing kind of community templates. If I were to go back home, we can see that there's over 1,200 templates out there with close to 12 million downloads. All right, with close to about 12 million downloads. Okay, so now we already talked about how to install that. You'll do .NET New --install, and I've already installed a few templates here. One would be the .NET Boxed, and I'm just doing the command to list the templates. So it's .NET New -L or --list. So here we can see I've got my Sayed tool and Sayed Web, Sayed Web Auth, and then I've got the kind of boxed templates over here as well. So those are how you would actually use those from the command line. Let me go ahead and go into Visual Studio itself. We'll show the experience, and then we'll kind of come back and talk about how can I create templates and all that sort of stuff. All right, so here's the kind of in Visual Studio experience, right? So as I kind of mentioned, I created a NuGet package that had 3 different templates. One was a console template, the other was a kind of a vanilla web app, and the other one was a web app showing how can I leverage auth here. And I am using like a kind of a Frankenstein build of Visual Studio. So should anything happen, I'm definitely going to blame that. So here we can see I've got my templates in my kind of recent used list here. We can also search. So if I was to search for Sayed, we should see those templates there. And, one thing that I want to kind of point out is, we're providing a first-class experience for this, right? We've got the same support that our kind of built-in templates have. And you can't really, they've got the same support. So it's not like, custom templates are like a second-class citizen and you don't have to go somewhere special to find these things. They're right where you would expect them. And, for search and all that sort of stuff, it just works. And you can customize the icons and whatnot as well. And maybe we'll have time to go through and talk about that. So let me go through and create this .NET Core console project that I have. We can see that, we'll go ahead and kind of pre-populate with the recommended name, and I've customized that in my template. We go ahead and click next. We see that we've got custom parameters showing up here. So this is asking for author name. So I'll say Cody and Jordan. A description, I'll say cool command. Hit enter to go ahead and create that. So now this is calling the template engine to create that template. It's been created. If I was to go into my program.cs, I can see it says hello world. Description is cool command. Author is Cody and Jordan. And then if I was to, build and run this, it would kind of build and run as you would expect, right? And then similarly for the web apps as well, let me show you that kind of third template that I had there. And oh yeah, actually, you know what? There you have to. This is one thing that I forgot to kind of mention. So this feature is hidden behind a preview flag. So you have to 16.8 with like the latest previews, and that's the preview flag will show up. Then you have to check that checkbox, and all that information is in the AK link that I have. We'll get back to that as well, and I'll show you that. What I want to show you here is we have also first-class support, not only for custom parameters.
Quick second, Sai. Could you increase the font of the text on the
See if I can
editor?
zoom in on this guy real quick.
Yeah.
What's going on here?
I just had a question in the chat about that.
Zooming here for some reason. Just 1 second. Oh wow, way too big.
Well, that's good.
Whoa, dude. Let's go see what's going on here. Oh man,
There we go.
Crazy, dude. So anyway, sorry about that. It's my first time trying this particular. Yes, we can see here that we've got, not only first-class support for custom parameters, but also for authentication methods here, right? So on this template, I can indicate whether it has no auth, individual accounts, or Windows accounts. So that's what I wanted to show you guys there. So yeah, that's what we got. And then we also have kind of similar support in Visual Studio for Mac. I think Jordan will kind of sync back with us later on to show a kind of quick demo in Visual Studio for Mac. Should we go through and take a look at how these templates were created and go through the kind of list of resources that we got there, Cody?
Yeah, I think so. I think that'd be great.
Okay, great. Awesome. Okay, so let's go to, All right, so the main link that you want is this aka link right here. So aka.ms/netcore templates with a dash in between. And that's all in that URL list link that Cody provided previously. So when we go there, we're going to come to this page here. This is a repository that has some samples for templates, specifically kind of geared towards showing them in Visual Studio and Visual Studio for Mac. If you've never created your own template before, I've got a couple of links here for you. So this one goes to a blog post that I authored a few years ago. This one goes to kind of the official docs. And then here is the checkbox that I was talking about, how to enable this, right? So this is 16.8 previews in Visual Studio. So you go to Tools Options, and then you come down to Preview Features, and you'll check this checkbox, Show All NetCore Templates in New Project Dialog. After you check that checkbox, you have to restart your instance of Visual Studio. And whenever you install a new template, you go .NET new -- install whatever, you have to close, you have to basically restart all instances of Visual Studio there. And then if you're on the Mac side of the house, you'll go to Visual Studio menu, pick Preferences, and then go to Other Preview Features, and then enable this checkbox for that preview feature. So that's how it goes. So let's start taking a look at the code that I have here. And what we have is I've got some kind of hints. Actually, you know what? Maybe we can just do it side by side, basically. Let me load up the code here. Where's my mouse? There it is. All right. All right. So here is here's the code for this code that I'm looking at right here is in that repository. This is the my command sample here. Actually, you know what? Before I go into the template.json, let me just go ahead and take a look at the source files here. So, let's quickly kind of take a look at my program.cs here. You'll see this looks like just a regular program.cs, right? There, I didn't have to go in here and take things out and tokenize them to where it wouldn't build anymore. This project can build and run all day long. If I was doing this with VS Template, I'd have to replace my command with something like %, namespace root %, and then obviously that wouldn't build and run anymore. So yeah, so that's kind of cool. And then inside the template.json, this is basically what you do is, in order to take a project that you've already have and you want to make it into a template, what you'll do is you actually will create a folder that's called .template.config. And then inside that folder, you'll create a template.json file. And that's the only file that's actually required for the template. I'll get back to these other two files soon. So now let's go through here. I always recommend users to include the schema here, because that's going to give you some completions and validations when using editors like Visual Studio, Visual Studio Code, and a bunch of other editors. You need author to be listed here. That's the name of the person or organization who's created it. Classifications. I do have some details here for classifications, but to kind of summarize that, in the new project dialog, there is a drop down that's used for filtering, and it's this one on the right side that says all project types, and there's a list of values there, and you're going to want to pick one of those classifications, one or more classifications that apply from that list. Then you'll give it a name, default name. So when I went through Visual Studio and created a new project, you might have noticed that the default name was my command tool, like 1 or 9 or whatever it was. So this is where that kind of gets picked up. If you leave this off, your default name will always be project, and it'll be like project 1, project 2, so on and so forth. You always need identity. This is the name of the template. The short name is, the short name. You always want to include tags. You want language, C# for C#, VB for VB, so on and so forth. For type, the value should be either project or item. For project templates, you use project, obviously. And that's the other thing, let's say if you've got in this talk, we're mostly kind of talking about project templates, but we also do support item templates. So if you install a NuGet package that has item templates, they will show up in the new item dialog. And source name. Remember where I said we just kind of declare the strings that we want to change instead of changing my code, right? So source name is a special one. When you create a project with a name, whether that's through Visual Studio for the project text box, or you do .NET New -N, that replacement will basically replace anything for source name. So you can see how I've got my command here. So that will be replaced just by adding the source name. And you always want source name. And then after this is the parameters and whatnot. So that's kind of a brief rundown, and all the stuff that I kind of mentioned here is already on this list in this document. One thing that you need to take care of is if you want custom parameters to show up in Visual Studio, we have a bug that you have to have the framework indicated there, and if you don't have the framework, none of the parameters will show up. But we'll fix that bug later on. But it's always important to indicate the framework in the template, because without that, it could just be created on whatever framework, and your project may not build or run, basically. All right, and then there's also some kind of port stuff here for how to do ports and whatnot. One thing that is kind of very important for these templates is to add an icon for Visual Studio and Visual Studio for Mac. So let me show you how to do that. So anything that's specific to an IDE, so basically anything that doesn't relate to .NET New, will go inside of a file called ide.host.json. And there's a number of kind of more specific files here, but in general, you should use ide.host.json. And in here, we've got a icon property. The icon has to be in or underneath the .template.config file to get picked up. And then I've got this property here, and that's what kind of enabled that icon to appear for me. And then also you need to declare which parameters should be shown in Visual Studio. And you also have the opportunity to kind of customize the text and description there. And we can see that I've got that information here. So that's how that works. Yeah. Was there any questions in the chat that came through that we should be addressing, Cody?
Yeah, it's quite a few. Let me pop some up. So let's start with a comment from Priyong. Would be great to see contents of those templates before we download these. I think that's referring to the .NET Templates website. So that could be some a new feature to work on, kind of get an idea, make sure it's a safe download, I assume is what that's getting on there.
That's a great idea. I never even thought about that, to be honest with you. I'm not sure what that would look like, but yeah, wonderful suggestion. I'll definitely kind of keep it in the back of my mind and try to see if I can come up with something for that for sure.
Sweet. Jaron has another question that is there an easy way to roll out templates in the organization, like embedding a VS extension or an auto update extension?
So for an organization, I think you have a few options there. I think the easiest, I think the main option that I would choose is basically having a private NuGet feed somewhere, whether that's hosted on your internal network, or through a third party like myget.org. So that's what I would do, and I would install all my templates into that custom repository, custom NuGet server, and then users will .NET New that. Now, with that being said, so this is really just kind of the beginning here, right? Because you notice the first thing that you have to do is basically find your template, using that website that I created, and then you use the CLI to install the template with .NET New. And then from there, it's available in Visual Studio, right? So obviously what we want to do is, we want to integrate those experiences into the IDE directly as well. So users can find templates and install them directly in the IDE. And then after that would be the step of, hey, if there's a template that's already been installed, it would be really great to have, an update capability there. So we'll definitely have those types of features. But we're not quite there yet, but that's kind of the vision there, basically. Mm-hmm.
Cool. And Danilo, you have some questions on VS for Mac. We're going to take those after we go through some of these template questions. So we will get to yours. I'm not skipping you, I promise. We're going to hop over to Vivek. A lot of numbers, 321123. If installed on it, new CLI command, will the templates be available in Visual Studio?
If I understand the question correct, it's, if I do .NET New -- install with a template, will that appear in Visual Studio? So the answer would be yes. But you have to check the checkbox that we showed earlier. And you have to make sure, you've kind of closed out all of your instances of Visual Studio and reopened it. And then the other wrinkle was what I kind of mentioned before, that, I said, hey, if you're developing your own template and you want to test it, even locally, you have to create a NuGet package and then install it with that. So if you do .NET new -- install folder path, those templates will just not appear in the IDE. It always has to be .NET new -- install NuGet package, whether it's coming from NuGet.org or from another server or from a local file. It doesn't matter as long as it's a NuGet package. Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right, hopping over to Jaren has a question here. Does the templating engine also support generating based on more complex data, like an XML specification or some such like that?
That's a great question. This question has come up in the past, and I have to say that a few years ago, I owned the template engine and I was on that team, and I was kind of pretty much fully plugged in with everything. But I'm still kind of plugged in, but not fully, because I don't own the template engine anymore. But as far as I know, they don't have this capability yet. But what they do have is they have a capability to kind of run custom pre and post actions. So it might be possible to create a post action for this scenario here, and then that could potentially pull in the data that's needed. But I'm not sure I don't believe they have any kind of first class support for this type of thing. But yeah, the question has come up before.
Yeah, and this would be a great question for the VS feedback portal. I forgot community. What's it called?
Developer
Jordan.
community.
It's developer community. Thank you. Mine's not what it used to be. We can add a link to the URL list for that. I think Mads actually had a post to the blog a few weeks ago that covered changes to that site. So that'd be a good post for there as well. Jonathan has a question here. Do item templates already show up and add new item dialog in the current preview?
Yeah, so they should. Yeah, and then same kind of restrictions apply that I talked about before.
Cool.
And if you find, like, let's say if you find a template that doesn't show up, right, for one reason or another, odds are it's probably a template issue. But what I'm trying to do is I'm creating a tool to kind of analyze the templates. That way, then I can start reaching out to template authors. And I've already kind of started reaching out to some folks, and even sending PRs and all the information. So let's say if you're a template author, right? Template authors need to go to this repository here and then read through all these different things, right? And at the very bottom, I have like a common issues, right? So you need to have all these required properties. You need to have these tags. Like, let's say, for instance, you don't have this type tag, or if you set it to something besides project or item, it just won't show up, right? So there are still some kind of gotchas here, and but that's also why I kind of was pointing back to using the schema, because if you've got the schema listed there, then that should provide you some validations and completions to help you along the way. And they're updating the scheme. They updated it a couple weeks ago, and there's more updates that are happening. So they're kind of actively editing that schema. So you might see some kind of new validations coming in over time. Yeah.
Cool.
On the question real quick about the item templates, on Visual Studio for Mac, we don't have the item templates loading yet. That'll be the release that's coming up is V8.8. 8.9 is the time we're looking at that coming in, when the feature also comes out of the preview feature. So that's not in Visual Studio for Mac just yet.
Cool. I'm going to pop through some questions quickly. I want to make sure we have time to show some VS for Mac stuff too. Paris, does the schema prompt what's required? Is it like completion?
Yeah.
And yes, it does.
Yeah, exactly. So let me pop back into template.json here. So if I was to remove identity here, I should be getting an error. I know in Visual Studio for sure I would get it, but I also should get that here in VS Code, I believe. Yeah, see, missing property identity.
And if you type in "I," will it show identity as a completion?
Oh yeah.
Oh, cool. Look at that.
Right. That's right. Yep. So that's why you should always have the schema declared, not only for template.json, but also for template For ide.host.json, and all these files are in my my repository here, basically, right inside the source. And then I go into my command, and then inside the .template.config folder. Mm-hmm.
Cool. Let's go to a question here. Let me see. Paris also asked if there's simple markdown or ASCII docs such as bold, italics, and URLs.
In the description, allow simple markdown ASCII doc. Well, I'm not
Yeah,
really
so I take
sure.
that as your template description. When you look in the new project dialog, could you embolden some text? Could you italicize it?
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting question. We don't even have support for kind of built-in templates for that. I'm not sure what you would bold and not bold there, but no, there's no support for that. And as far as I know, there's no plan for anything like that as well. But you could definitely file an issue on developer community for that one. Mm-hmm.
Cool. We got a suggestion from Krill. This would probably be good for developer community as well,
okay.
but would be
Okay,
nice.
this is.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Cody.
No, I was just going to read it. I think you can just go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, the question is, we already have the ability to create templates either from a folder or from a NuGet package, but maybe we should also do support for GitHub. And to be honest with you, this was one of my kind of key things when I was first starting to think about template engine. I always wanted GitHub support. We never quite got there, but I'm happy to say that now I think we are kind of warming up to that idea, and I'm pretty hopeful that that we're going to be able to implement that. But obviously no guarantees. But yeah, that's on our radar. I would love to have that feature. That's even a further simplification to it. Mm-hmm.
Very nice. Now, I know that I promised Danilo we would get to his VS for Mac question, so I want to pop that up. Is in a new version of VS 2019 for Mac, do you have any disadvantages, and are they being corrected? I think that any disadvantages will always be corrected. It is under active development. So, but Jordan, if you want to expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, and there was a follow-up question. You don't need to highlight this one, but playing off of that, it's also asking about if some of so your question, the next question there too, you're asking about some of the highlighted issues in documentation, when those would be fixed. I'm thinking of that as you might be referring to the known issues I have in those preview release notes. So taking these questions combined, right now in the latest preview release, there was an issue that came up where Blazor WASM debugging wasn't working with the .NET 5 RC1 that came out. So we've got that fixed up with .NET 5 RC2, and when that's installed, to be able to run that with the latest preview we put out, and Blazor WASM debugging should be back up and running. I'll admit at this exact moment, I'm not certain of the state of RC2, so I can't speak to where that is, but that's definitely, yeah, you'll see that fixed by the time that this is 8.8 also goes out to what we call the stable channel when it's released. There was another issue mentioned in there about, in the known issues, there's a couple of other cases of things that can happen with certs getting messed up, or a scenario of some rare issue that comes up. Those might be things that are more of as there are new versions of the .NET SDK that people are adopting. Some of these will go away, but there may be a few known issues in that list that'll just stay around that we'll keep to make sure people know if you run into this case right now during RC releases or beta releases, here's some ways to work around them. If I take a real quick, I'll also pivot off of this just as I guess you could say an advertising opportunity for everybody about known disadvantages. A thing about VS for Mac that I could call out is that we support .NET Core development, Xamarin development, and Unity development for games. So Xamarin for mobile, Unity for games. Those are the scenarios that we support. So if you do ASP.NET and .NET Framework development, not on .NET Core, those are scenarios you wouldn't find in Visual Studio for Mac. Same with C++. So I also want to take that answer another way, as at a high level, if you're looking at Visual Studio for Mac for some things that are .NET Framework, C++, other workloads, we don't target those. But since this is the .NET Community Standup, I'm assuming probably everybody's interested in .NET, and we're all talking .NET Core a whole bunch these days. So probably fits for what most of you are looking for right now.
Yes, and I just wanted to post up that comment that we made earlier, that the blog link for developer community updates is in the chats in whichever tool you're using, all the chats. And it's also here if you want to, again, type it very slowly. I would recommend copying and pasting though, but I'm not going to judge. Cool. So I think now we can open it up for any, generic questions, any questions you have at all about .NET, the tooling, you know, what the weather is today in the Pacific Northwest in Florida.
I
Whatever you
noticed
want to
there
talk
was
about.
I noticed there was an interesting question here that I wanted to kind of address here. So there was
Cool.
a question about a wizard here.
Yes.
So the question was,
Vic is there.
yeah, exactly. So we had custom project wizard here. So yeah, so when you create extensions for Visual Studio, you might want to add some kind of additional capabilities there through commands and gestures and that sort of thing, and a part of that might also be templates, right? So now, I think a great example of this is the AWS templates. So Norm over in the AWS templates, he's created a whole entire suite of AWS related templates. I think they got 20 or 30 templates in their package. And then what they do is they actually take that and wrap it up into a Visual Studio extension that, they have their own kind of new project wizard there. And then also kind of additional functionality. I think they have like a toolbox and a publishing experience and whatever. I don't really know all the details, but in that case, for those users who have, let's say you install the AWS templates on the command line and you install the Visual Studio extension, you don't want those templates to automatically appear in the new project dialog because they're already kind of covered with your extension. So we're working on a feature to where template authors can indicate that in the host file that says, don't show my templates in the IDE. So that's that. So now getting back to the question, right? How can I create it? If the things that people were doing with custom wizards and all that sort of stuff, all that sort of stuff still works, right? And if you're using VS template for your templates today, you might want to consider changing those to be template engine based templates because you're probably going to spend a lot less time maintaining your templates. The tricky part is going to be getting your V6 kind of configured in a way to where that will work. So the idea is, you create your template NuGet package. The NuGet package will get embedded into the V6, and then inside your VS template file, you have to have like a custom wizard that calls the template engine. So anybody who's got questions on that, they can reach out to me or create an issue in this repository, and then I'll create some links there. But yeah. So hopefully that's the answer to that question. But you won't be able to modify how your template appears in new project dialog, as far as I know. But yeah.
Cool. And Max has a good question. Go ahead.
How easy is it to create a new Visual Studio extension? I'm not really sure. I don't, the whole, honestly, dude, I used to create extensions all the time because of these templates. And man, it was taking me so much time. I got so aggravated. I said, hey, we need to fix this. This is just not the right way to do it. So I don't have any extensions. I can't tell you how easy or difficult it is to create extensions. But I think Mads has a Friday show, and I think I think Max should go to Mads's show, and he even does like, hey, let's create an extension live. I think, so Mads is the extension guy, but
yeah, Mads
I try to stay away from the extensions.
And there's extensions for VS for Mac as well. I think there's a framework there too, and it's all what's the thing called? Oh gosh, I gotta Google this or Bing it now. Excuse me. I have to Bing this to see what I was speaking of. What's that shared backend for extensions? The
MPAC?
MEF, Microsoft Extensibility Framework. Yeah, that is on both VS for Mac and VS Windows now too. So you can get some good cross-platform extensioning there too, and of course VS Code also with its rich ecosystem of extensions. There's this. I was working on this extension with VS Code for to-do lists, so that's always a good one too. All right, let's say any plans to consolidate. Yeah, this is a deep one. Any plans to consolidate some of the VS project templates like class library? We now got .NET Core, .NET Framework, .NET Standard. Create one template with .NET Choice on the wizard.
That's a great question. I think that is a great question for Kathleen Dollard. She, I believe, owns those templates. It's really kind of tricky here. Basically, we could have one template for that using the template engine, and you could kind of create conditional sections, this, that, and the other thing. So yeah, there shouldn't be a reason why we couldn't do that, but we haven't yet.
Yeah, and I think one of the cool things that Microsoft's always trying to do too is ensure there's this backwards compatibility, and that there's a sense of being able to not what's the term that not move people's cheese. That's the term that one of our managers used to use all the time. So that's an important aspect of it too, that we want to keep the consistency as well. We have a question from Kirill here. Will templates work with source generators? Will they use them? What's in the future? What's in the future is a really deep question just in general. But
yeah, exactly. Another kind of great question for Kathleen Dollard. She's the kind of template engine kind of owner there. But with that being said, I do know that Kathleen is particularly passionate about source generators, and she's been kind of syncing up with me and talking about integrating some source generator ideas into the template engine. So yeah, we might see some integration with source generators. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, I've worked with Kathleen in the past too. She's great. A good resource there. We should have her on the show soon. That'd be pretty fun.
Mm-hmm.
Jaren has a question here. What about transformations on existing code as part of a template?
Sure. Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah. Definitely got all that capability. I think the best thing to do is kind of go through the resources that I've provided here, and then also go take a look through GitHub. Where is it actually? It's GitHub ASP. Yeah, that's the one. What I would recommend people to do is, if you're trying to create like a kind of advanced template that's got, different sections and whatnot, it's always good to take a look at the open source templates. And, not only the first party templates created by Microsoft, but also the third party templates like, the .NET box. I think is a great example that's got a bunch of options and whatnot. So yeah, here I'm on GitHub.net ASP.NET Core. I went into source project templates folder. If I was to go into web project templates, maybe I make this bigger actually. If I was to go in here and content, we can take a look at this. So I'll go into Razor Pages Web C#. So this is the web app template for C#. Let's take a look at startup.cs actually. That'll be an interesting one. Okay, great. So let me zoom in on this a little bit. And I mentioned before, one of the kind of goals with template engine is, for all the cases that we can, at least, we always want to maintain a runnable project, right? So you should always be able to run your source. So now you can see that what we do is for these file types, we integrate with the existing kind of comment capabilities that are there. So for C#, we use the preprocessor. So if I have #diff, organizational auth, or individual B2C, this section will only be rendered if one of these two auth options were passed in. And then similarly for other file types, we have, kind of similar syntax here. So pages, I think in the index.cshtml, so you can see here we've got the if, generate, API, or graph, so that type of syntax. And every file has its own kind of syntax here. So that's also one of the kind of challenges with the template engine is, for that particular file type, you have to figure out what's the right syntax there. Let me go into a JSON file here. So launch settings.json. So you can see here we've got we use /#diff or whatever. So this is how you'd create some kind of conditional content in the templates. Yeah. But this can get pretty, like let's say if you've got like a kind of big template and you got a bunch of different options, this could get to be pretty kind of crazy as well. So there's also another approach that's even more kind of complicated. What you can do is you can have the same template you can have a template with the same name, but different parameters. And then when your template is instantiated, the template engine will figure out which one to actually use. Like, for example, let's say if you have a template that's called Jordan Web, and you have two versions, one that has an auth parameter and one that doesn't have an auth parameter. If you run that and you say auth, then it will automatically pick up the one with the auth parameter and leave off the other one. So there's a lot of different ways to achieve that. But at the end of the day, what we're doing inside Visual Studio with ASP.NET core projects, they're pretty complicated, got good number of options. So anything that you can do there, you can do in your own templates.
Cool, perfect. It's going to see if there's any more questions in the chat here. I don't believe so. Any last questions in the last few minutes of our presentation here? You're welcome, Darren. Okay, so I'm going to post our Twitters here if you want to reach out to us. Just 1 second. See if I can do this live. Not that one. Let's hit edit and let's hit paste. Let's say save. Let's post it. There we go. You can reach out to us on Twitter if you'd like. Jordan's J. Matthiesen. Sayed is Sayed Hashimi. I'm at CL Beyer. And Kendra, the normal host, is Got Heap. So feel free
here
to
with us in spirit today.
Yes, definitely. So feel free to reach out to all of us on Twitter. We're always looking for feedback on anything related to the VS for Mac, VS Windows, VS Code, VS, any VS Online, GitHub, Codespaces, anything. So thank you so much again for joining us. Any last questions in the last 15 seconds? No? All right. Well, we will be here next month. I think it's 3 or 4 weeks from now, the same time, same place. Be sure to check out all the other .NET community stand-ups. Schedule should be on the page from which you're watching us. And if you have any other questions that we didn't get to today, again, feel free to reach out to us on Twitter, and we'll be happy to answer them. Thank you all so much.
All right, Cody, I was going to say real quick, join us for .NET Conf on November 10th. I think that's going to happen before we all meet here again.
There. I don't know where to point right there. Yes. November 10th, .NET Conf. Virtual, but it's normally virtual anyway, so it's good. And always going to be some fun stuff to announce there and fun stuff to do. So thank you again very much. Again, I'm Cody Beyer. Jordan, any last words? Last words, the wrong way to say it.
No. Thanks for everybody coming. Nice to see you here today.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, right. Thank you. Bye-bye.